Okay, here's the kicker. Get this. Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really? Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you die on stage, you get 72 virgin. And Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak, and England might arrest him, I would have said, what are you?
All right, buckle up, because this one's going to blow your mind. Saudi Arabia, yes, that's Saudi Arabia, is hosting a comedy festival this month. Let that sink in for a second. A country where, not too long ago, telling the wrong joke could land you behind bars, or worse, is now rolling out the red carpet for stand-up comedians. And not just any comedians. Dave Chappelle himself, the man who's triggered entire armies of blue-haired Twitter activists with a single punchline, is performing in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, in England, that same joke could probably get him handcuffed. Tell me that's not the world flipped completely upside down. If you had told me 10 years ago that Saudi Arabia would be chill enough to host Chappelle, while the UK would be arresting people for tweets, I'd have laughed in your face and probably asked what you were smoking. But here we are, living in a reality where the so-called Free West is cracking down on speech, while countries once criticized for authoritarianism are, ironically, loosening up. And this right here is why the battle for free speech matters more than ever. Because the outrage industry, the professional victims, the online mobs, the people who wake up every morning looking for something to be offended by, aren't just mad at jokes anymore. They're weaponizing that outrage to shut people up, to silence anyone who dares step outside their ideological comfort zone. Think about it, flag burning is protected speech. It's offensive, it's ugly, but the Supreme Court said it counts. Yet one off-color joke, one spicy tweet, and suddenly the mob's calling for your head.
Why?
Because they don't care about free speech, they care about control. Bill Maher nailed it. The left loves to brag about being defenders of free expression, but only when it's their expression. The moment someone else says something that challenges their worldview, boom. You're a bigot, a fascist, or a threat to democracy.
But that's the great irony. Flag burning is free speech, and free speech is one of the key things that makes America great. So now that I have you on my side on that issue, don't be a hypocrite and defend attacks on speech from the left, because you either get the concept or you don't. And sadly, a lot of people don't anymore.
It's like free speech now only exists inside a carefully padded bubble. Step outside it and you're done. Once upon a time, Americans understood this. Free speech wasn't a privilege. It was part of our DNA. But somewhere along the way, that got lost. We started raising a generation that treats it like a threat instead of a right. Thanks to activist professors, fragile classrooms, and a culture that values feelings over facts. Take Lisa Cook, for example, a Federal Reserve Board member who once tried to get a colleague fired simply because he wasn't enthusiastic enough about Martin Luther King Day. Fired for not clapping hard enough. And this is someone helping shape our economic policy, yet she believes speech should come with limits. That's not education. That's indoctrination dressed up as virtue.
Mostly the young who were never taught it by their derelict educational system. But also Lisa Cook. She's the Fed board member Trump is trying to fire for bullshit reasons, and they are bullshit. But when she tried to get another professor fired because he once, according to one student, was less than rapturous about Martin Luther King Day, no, she should know better. She said free speech should have its limits. Yes, it should, and does. And this comes nowhere.
And let's be clear, Trump trying to fire her isn't some attack on free speech. It's a pushback against a system hijacked by activists who want classrooms to be echo chambers. But hypocrisy cuts both ways. For all his talk about defending free speech, Trump's track record isn't spotless either, calling reporters the enemy of the people, threatening to sue networks, even booting the Associated Press from press pools when coverage didn't flatter him. That's not exactly the spirit of open dissent. The truth is simple. Free speech only means something if it applies to everyone, even the voices you can't stand. Otherwise, it's not freedom, it's favoritism.
that Trump is attacking free speech from the right, throwing the Associated Press out of the press pool, calling reporters enemy of the people, threatening and suing networks simply because he doesn't like the coverage. This country can't become that.
But here's where it really gets disturbing. Look across the pond at Britain. The birthplace of Shakespeare, Monty Python, and centuries of brilliant satire is now arresting comedians and writers over tweets. 12,000 arrests a year, yes, 12,000, for things people said online. Just let that sink in. Last week alone, Graham Linehan, the Emmy-winning creator of Father Ted and a 5-time BAFTA winner, was arrested the moment he stepped off a plane at Heathrow. His crime? Not violence, not threats, not weapons, just expressing his opinions about gender ideology on Twitter. Words, not actions. And yet, in modern Britain, that's apparently enough to put you in handcuffs.
Can't become what the UK is now. A place where you get arrested for tweets. Something that happens 12,000 times a year now in Britain. Last week, the Irish sitcom writer Graham Linehan, who's won an Emmy and 5 BAFTA awards, got off a plane at Heathrow and got arrested by 5 British cops. Not because he was selling drones to the Houthis, just because he's a crank who spends way too much time online ranting about gender ideology.
Meanwhile, over in Germany, a man called a politician a Pimmel, basically a childish insult meaning D*ck, and that single word sparked a full-blown police raid. Imagine that. An entire law enforcement operation over playground-level name-calling. Talk about a truly Pimmel move.
In Germany, a guy called a politician a Pimmel, which is the German word for and it triggered a police raid. What a Pimmel move.
Here's the wild irony. If men dressing as women were banned, half of British comedy history would vanish overnight. Shakespeare's plays? Cancelled. Monty Python? Over before the first sketch. Yet now, the very country that built its identity on satire is censoring comedians for doing what comedy does best, pushing boundaries. Ricky Gervais said it perfectly. If you don't believe in someone's right to say things that offend you, then you don't believe in free speech at all. Period.
Which is an odd obsession for a comedian from across the pond, because if men weren't allowed to dress as women, British comedy wouldn't exist. There'd be absolutely nothing left of Shakespeare but the sonnets, and Monty Python movies would be 20 seconds long. But in the words of that great Brit, Ricky Gervais, if you don't believe in a person's right to say things that you might find grossly offensive, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. You shouldn't have to eat your words at the airport. The chicken Alfredo on the flight was bad enough.
It's a strange fixation for a British comedian, because let's be honest, if men dressing as women were banned, British comedy would barely exist. Shakespeare would be reduced to his sonnets, and Monty Python sketches would last maybe 20 seconds. But as Ricky Gervais once said, if you don't believe in someone's right to say things you find offensive, you don't believe in free speech at all. You shouldn't have to swallow your words at the airport. The in-flight chicken Alfredo is punishment enough. Free speech isn't supposed to be pretty. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and yes, it means sometimes you'll hear things you absolutely despise. That's the cost of freedom. You don't get to cherry-pick the kind of speech you approve of and still call yourself a defender of it. That's not free speech. That's censorship with good PR. And it's not just comedians taking the hits. Look at J.K. Rowling, one of the most successful authors alive, who was vilified simply for expressing concerns about gender ideology, politely at that. She lost friends, faced death threats, and was labeled everything from a bigot to pure evil. Yet she didn't back down, because real free speech isn't about being liked. It's about standing on principle. Same goes for Dave Chappelle. He cracks a joke, and suddenly Netflix employees are walking out, activists are demanding cancellations, and think pieces paint him as a villain. But audiences still show up, still laugh, still get it. Because deep down, people know free speech matters more than feelings.
And may be crude, but there's plenty of non-crazy people, liberal people, who think the left, has gone a little mad with trans issues. Some have expressed that opinion with literary sophistication, like J.K. Rowling. Some by getting big laughs, like Dave Chappelle. And some are downright ugly about it, like Linehan. But ugly is the price of a freedom so great as speech.
And then there are the downright absurd cases. Take the Scottish man who was dragged into court for teaching his pug to do a Nazi salute as a joke. Tasteless? Absolutely. Criminal hate speech?
Come on.
Even Elon Musk watched the clip and shrugged, saying, "I don't see it." It was dumb humor, not a manifesto, but apparently context no longer matters when outrage is the law of the land.
Yorkshire in Britain faced 2 years in prison for wearing a Halloween costume depicting the terrorist who bombed the Ariana Grande concert. Bad taste? Yeah, bad taste is the whole point of Halloween. This Scottish man was found guilty of hate speech for a YouTube video where he taught his pug to salute when he said Sieg Heil.
Sieg Heil. Sieg Heil.
Elon Musk watched it and said, "I don't see it."
And that right there is the key difference. In America, he'd get roasted online, maybe become a meme, and deal with a few angry tweets. In Britain, he walked away with a criminal record. That's the line between a free society and one inching toward authoritarianism. In a free nation, bad speech is met with better speech. In an unfree one, it's met with handcuffs.
Trump tried to disappear someone for writing an anti-Israel op-ed in a student newspaper, which I found offensive, but I still would go to the mat for that person to be able to print it. And we can fight Trump on this because we have a First Amendment. England does not. And the fact that they don't, that's not a feature, that's a bug. And it's a bug that's going around Europe.
And now Britain's pushing something called the pub law, a proposal that would make so-called workplace harassment a crime not just in offices, but in pubs, cafes, basically anywhere people open their mouths. Let that sink in. Your local bar could turn into a surveillance zone. Crack a joke someone doesn't like? Boom, reported, investigated, maybe even arrested. Imagine sitting in a pub, pint in hand, and having to censor every word. That's not freedom. That's North Korea with beer taps.
Kanye, this dog. They're all wrong, and they all have the right to be wrong. Britain is now considering the so-called pub law. Okay, it's not just about pubs. It's a workplace bill aimed at preventing any kind of harassment in the workplace, including verbal remarks overheard. Okay, problem is a pub is a workplace, so is a bookstore. Would a major chain like Waterstones risk hosting a book signing by a controversial author like J.K. Rowling? And pubs? People go to pubs for two reasons: to drink and to exercise their inalienable right to talk.
Meanwhile, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Saudi Arabia is out here hosting Dave Chappelle. The irony writes itself. The very countries we use to scold about censorship are inching toward openness, while the so-called Free West is locking down speech. And let's be clear, once free speech goes, every other freedom follows. History proves it every time. The right to question, to debate, to offend, that's the heartbeat of democracy. Strip that away, and you're not living free anymore. You're being managed.
Here's the kicker. Get this. Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really? Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you die on stage, you get 72 virgin. And Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, "What are you?"
So, what's the answer? It's actually pretty simple. Defend free speech like your freedom depends on it, because it does. Whether it's Jay's, K, Rowling, Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, or some random guy tweeting nonsense at 3 a.m., their right to speak is your right to speak. If they lose it, we all lose it. Sure, Some speech is offensive, some of it's flat out awful, but the solution isn't censorship, it's conversation. You counter bad ideas with better ones. You debate, argue, roast, and ridicule. That's how a free society works. Nobody gets canceled into silence. They get challenged into reality. So here's my question to you. Where's the line? Should comedians have absolute freedom to say whatever they want, or are some limits justified? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation worth having. And if you made it this far, do me a favor. Hit like, smash subscribe, and share this with someone who still thinks free speech only counts when it's nice. The more we talk about it, the harder it gets for the censors to win. Because free speech isn't a luxury, it's survival. And if Saudi Arabia can start to figure that out, what's stopping us? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.